Good morning, everyone. I'm going to give a few minutes. We're a small group as expected because lots of people are back to work, but I'm going to give a few minutes for maybe others to join. So let's get started. First of all, can you hear me well? Type in the chat, please, so I'll make sure that you can hear me. So last time, So last time we had reached this point, if I'm not mistaken. Just a second. Okay, you can hear me, great. So last time I was starting to do this slide. So basically, these are two types of images, of ways to store an image, and they are very, very different. So first of all, the one on the left is called raster. This is what I've explained in the first and second modules. Basically, a raster image is composed of pixels, of little dots, which can be different colors, and an image is made up of those. The more pixels you have, the more sharp and large is the image. Now, obviously, I think I mentioned this already. If you're going to manipulate an image, ideally you start with a large image with a lot of resolution. Why? So that you never have to increase the size of the image by resizing it, because if you do, it starts to become blurry, or what we call pixelated. You start seeing the individual pixels. So ideally, in fact, when you buy an image, it's usually very high resolution, something like 4,000 or 6,000 pixels wide. Even on a mobile today, many mobiles have 6, 10 megapixel cameras, and those are huge images. So ideally, always start with a large image in case of pixels. In case of vector, a vector image is not really an image at all. It's a sort of instructions. In fact, if you open it in a notepad, you can actually see the text. It's text. And basically what it does is it tells the viewing system, the computer, the application that you're using, how to build the image, okay? How to build the view of the image. And ideally, it's these type of images are excellent for making things like billboards, for example, because you can enlarge them as much as you like. The instructions in the file will be things like go to position 0, which will usually be top left. Then move down 30%, for example, to the left, and 20% down, you know, that sort of thing. And you have the full instructions how to build the image. In fact, those of you maybe who have seen a plotter, one of these, the ones the architects use, a pen plotter, that's how they work as well. In fact, they need vector images. They use a language called HPGL. And there'll be instructions, and they move accordingly. Obviously, with a vector image, it's going to be extremely difficult to make a face, for example, to draw a face, because the file would have to, you know, be composed of hundreds of thousands of instructions. So we don't use it for that sort of thing. But then for using it for text, for example, to do a big sign, it is excellent. Also, an advantage of it is that you can manipulate it with Adobe systems as well. Usually we don't use Photoshop for that sort of thing. Photoshop is more of a raster, a bitmap system to manipulate image. For that too, you would use either InDesign, or there are several suites that you can use. In fact, when you buy ready-made images, sometimes they'll be vector. Usually the vector ones will be things like, for example, you know, graphics like the ones with graphs in them, and that are made up of squares and triangles, flat surfaces, but not gradations. You know, you're not going to find an image, a vector image of a sky, unlikely. And even if you do, it's not a good idea to use it. But for other things, it's excellent. For example, if you want to design a menu for a restaurant, if you go to Shutterstock and you search menu, there'll be thousands of vector images with menus. And what they'll have is, they're fantastic because you can edit them as much as you like, and a vector then as a composition can also include an image. So when you save it in AI format, it can also include an image. So, you know, but usually this is not Photoshop. I'm mentioning them because it's important to know they exist. In fact, here you can see an example. This is on the left, this letter A is a bitmap image. This is what we usually do, what we usually use. And this is a vector image. The vector image is actually obviously perfect because it's made of lines. The bitmap image here is exaggerated so that you see the effect, but usually the pixels will be so small. I mean, if I had to zoom out from here, it would happen, that your eye doesn't see the individual pixels. And when there are diagonal lines like this one and strange angles, you will see them as perfect. But obviously that's because today we can use high resolution images. Those of you who are my age, I remember the first games, the computer games, when they came out, they used to be made up of very low resolution. The screen, I mean, my screen here is 19, it's HD, so 1900 by something, by 248, I think. At the time, we used to use 320 by 200. I mean, on the screen, it would look like a postage stamp. And in those pixels, in those amount of pixels, we used to manage to include the graphics to make a game. But obviously, the game players, whatever they were, fighters or whatever, heroes, they would be made up of like 10 pixels each. So there isn't obviously much definition. But at the time, that was the power that existed. For vectors, we use as well the encapsulated format. This is available in Photoshop as well. In fact, if the graphics application you are using cannot read native vector files, because sometimes it can't, you can save them as encapsulated PostScript. This is not a Photoshop proprietary file type, but it's Photoshop can open it. Makes use of the same mathematical equations in vectors. One program, in fact, that uses vectors extensively is called AutoCAD. It's used by, I would say, all the architects all over the world. It's a de facto standard for architecture. And they use a file extension called DWG. In fact, but from AutoCAD, it's made by a company called Autodesk. You can save them as EPS and then open them in Photoshop. Again, why is it important for architects to use a vector? Because architects require scaling. You know, when you, in fact, when you make a plan, an architect makes a plan for you, and he prints it out on a plotter, it will be perfectly scaled. So if you get a ruler and you measure the size of a wall, it's going to match exactly according to the scale. If you photocopy it and you mess around with it a bit, you lose the scaling. Because once it becomes a bitmap, a graphic, then the scaling doesn't apply. So that's why it's important to keep them in vector format. They use DWG, but they can be transferred. So another thing as well I wanted to mention, sometimes you get a file from someone and you can't open it because when you click on it on your mobile, for example, or even on a PC or a Mac, when you click on it, the system tells you, what am I going to open it with? Now, not everyone is born brilliant. I mean, I wouldn't know them all anyway. All I would do is go to Google, type .pcx, for example, a format which is rarely used nowadays is PCX. We used to use it a lot in the olden times. If you do .pcx, then you can save, .pcx file type in Google, and it will give you what you can use to open it with. Usually I try Photoshop, but if it doesn't open it, then I can revert to some other application and then save it as whatever, JPEG or PNG, and then use it as much as I like. So that was the one of last time. Now, let me share the other screen. And this is module 3. Now as well, just wanted to tell you that obviously I have made this course very much abridged. Usually this course is like 6, I think, or 8 lessons long, but we do a lot of hands-on as well. And I usually go around the classroom and seeing that everybody, you know, is managing and that sort of thing. But in this case, it's a bit more difficult. So now I'm going to talk about different selection methods in Photoshop. Now these I'll show you some examples. In fact, today, I think there are only 25 slides, but there's a lot which I'm going to show you in action. So let's share Photoshop. Okay, let's open a picture. So now, the first thing I'm going to show you is the most important tool that we use in Photoshop, which is the selection tool. Now, this is what I'm going to show you is done. It's called routing, and it's extremely important. Actually, let me open a better image than this, like this one. Now, let's say, now if you remember from last time, I did open, and the image is here, and it's just a background at the moment. There are no layers. It's just the JPEG image, which I downloaded from the internet earlier. Now, what is routing? Routing is, let's say, for example, I'm going to make an advert, okay? And the advert is going to be for enough hair products in this case. And I would like that to take out just the lady in the picture, but leave the background. Now, first of all, I purposely chose this picture because it's actually a bit difficult to do. Why? Because as you can see, if I zoom in the hair, there's not enough resolution to do it. Now, but in any case, how do I route? Well, let's go to the, now first I'm going to use this one. This is the polygonal, it's called the polygonal lasso tool. So basically what you do is this. Well, I'm going to try and cut out just the face, okay? So I start somewhere, wherever I like, and I stay doing this. So I'm sure that you're watching me do it, you're thinking, you need a lot of patience. Yes, in fact, there are in advertising agencies, usually this is something that's given to junior designers. They're just starting out, and it's pretty tedious actually. And you keep going around the picture, trying to be as accurate as possible. I'm all the time just clicking where I want it to go. Now, obviously, if you do a lot of straight lines, it's going to show. So ideally, you do them little by little, like this. Keep going. Now around the chin. And when I get to the end, I double click and they join. And now, as you can see, like I showed you last time with the marquee tool, with the polygonal, I've selected an irregular shape. And in fact, if I do now edit, copy, and edit, paste, let me zoom out, actual pixels. Now look what's happened. Now, first of all, I have the background and I have another layer. See? I can now manipulate the picture on its own. In fact, I can switch off the background and just leave the picture. Just a second, because there's someone at the door. So basically now it's a layer, and as I showed you last time, now I can, for example, manipulate the fill of the layer, you know, superimpose it on another image. Let's do that, for example. For example, if I want to open, enough, forget any image, select all, and see now I did select all, and the marquee, which I showed you last time, is now around the image. Okay, but if I do edit, copy, it's not going to copy these squares. These squares are there to show you that there is no background, because this is the only thing on this layer, as you can see here on the little one. Okay, and I can go to the other image, edit, paste, and I pasted the image. Obviously, the size will depend on the size of the images. These images are different. And I can as well edit, scale, and obviously I can do that. This is in fact what I was just telling you, that when you scale, if the image you start with is small, look what happens. If I paste, it's starting to lose a lot of detail if I exaggerate a bit more. See, now it doesn't look so bad, but actually it's already lost quite a lot of detail. Now, let's go back to the PowerPoint. So that was the polygonal lasso tool. Now, these, I'll show you most of them. These are actually all can come in handy, but the use is different. Let me show you now the magic wand, which is very interesting. I'll share screen. Now, the magic wand, I purposely prepared a picture. This one, okay? Now, why did I choose this image? Because what I did before, okay, with the polygonal, basically I zoomed in and I started moving around with the polygonal lasso tool around all this person, okay? And I would have just the person. But in this case, since the background is one color, it's much easier. In fact, usually when I work on a website or an advert or something, I make sure that when I buy an image of a person, I buy an image with no background, either no background or a white background, you know, some kind of background, so it doesn't interfere with the image. Because then, instead of going through all that hassle with the polygonal, I can simply choose this one, which is the magic wand tool, and look what happens. I just clicked. In fact, let's zoom out a bit so you can see it. Look, I just click on the color. So basically here there's this light gray color, and it selected, see the selection around it? It selected just the lady. Now obviously I would need also to select here, here, and here between the fingers. So to do that, if you press shift, let me show you here. Now I'm the selection. If I press shift, I get a plus. If I press alt, I get a minus. What does that mean? If you need to add this, I can press shift and click. Add this, press shift and click. Add this, press shift and click. You have to be careful you don't get any parts of the body instead. You know, and now, if I do, now you have to understand as well that what is selected is the gray. So if I want to select the girl, I would need to do select inverse. So it's going to select the opposite of what actually is selected at the moment. Look, and now only the girl is selected, and I can do edit, copy, and I can paste it on this picture, for example, and there you are. And as you can see, if I zoom in, it's pretty much perfect. It took even the detail of the hair and everything. But obviously that is because the image is on a homogeneous background. In the other one, if I go back to the image, this is impossible. Look what happens. Go to the select, magic wand, and if I choose here, wait, because I have to be on this layer first. See what happens? It just shows that. Now, here as well, in the magic wand, you have as well tolerance. See this tolerance? Even these are important, but mostly tolerance, you should remember. Tolerance means the different colors from the color I have chosen. Usually, for example, if I choose this blue here, and it's on 30, it's going to choose the 30 closest shades in the image to that color. Okay, so look, if I do that with 30, it shows this. If I have to do it 60, it shows more. See, now, you might be thinking then it's worth it to stay using the plus like we did before, because even this magic wand takes the plus, and I do this, and I do this. But see what happens then? It grabs everything else. And obviously that's a disaster and you can't work with it. So in this case, if I wanted to take the girl with the hair, everything, I would either have to do it manually with the polygonal tool, or most likely, in my case, I would simply not use this image at all, because this image is going to give me a huge problem to be able to use it. Again, if I had to do it, and there are times when they have no option, I would get at least a very high resolution image, so that when I zoom in, like here, you know, the hair isn't just a bunch of mess pixels. It will be, you know, I can zoom in much, much, much more. So obviously, In graphics and design, you have to use your imagination. For example, let me give you an example. Let's say I wanted to change the color of her lipstick. Okay, so zoom in a bit more. So first of all, I need her lips on their own. So at the moment we have the background, which is exactly as we started with. We have layer one, which is that face, the second face, and I'm going to first use the polygonal. See, and I've just selected roughly her lips, edit, copy, edit, paste. By the way, paste as well. You have either paste or paste in place. Paste in place, paste it exactly where I got it from. In fact, look, this is the second, the layer 2, which we just made, and I can move it around. Now, on that layer, I'm going to adjust. Decide to get this. I went to image, adjustments. I can use a lot of things to do this actually, but I'm going to use, let's say, hue. So, see, there's your purple lipstick. Now, this tool here is really good. Actually, what you have is hue means the actual color, the range of colors. Saturation is the saturation of colors. So, like how much paint you put into it. And this is lightness and brightness. And you can even control just the reds, the yellows, the greens, the cyans, the magentas, etc., as you like. These things, I mean, usually in a course we just mention them, but obviously you have to practice, try them out, see what they do, stay experimenting a bit. So let's go back to nice purple, view actual pixels, see, and it looks pretty much realistic because it's an exact copy of what there was before, and I can see, change the color. I can do the same with her eyes. I can put her a mustache if I like or whatever. But this is how you manipulate images. And so there's also most important, obviously the square select I showed you last time, but that is the thing that is most, yes, there's another thing as well, which is called the single row marquee. Now, what's a single row marquee? There are times when you need to make one pixel row or column, okay? Now, you might be tempted to zoom in, you know, and stay fiddling about with this like that, and doing one pixel like that. That's one way of doing it. But the people who designed Photoshop thought of it for us. So basically what we do is single column or row, up, and there it is. That's exactly one pixel, regardless of the resolution of the image. So if it's high resolution, it will be a small pixel. If it's low resolution, it will be a big pixel. And so you might be asking, what are these used for? These are used for usually to make borders, you know, that sort of thing. You never, I mean, I can't tell you, I've used them many, many times. One other thing, which is not in the slides, but I thought I'd tell you as well. In the end, I'm going to show you today how to sort of make a small advert from beginning to end as well. So I'll go through this again. One other thing is, here you see the ruler here, there's a ruler. There's a ruler here and the ruler here. Now, first of all, that you switch it on from here. View, tools, one of these, I can't see it at the moment, but you can switch it on and off. It's important that it's on. Now, when you design, let me show you. Let me bring up you see these blue lines here? Those I can view extras and they turn off. Now this is a menu, okay? Which I was making for someone. I'm going to switch them on again. Why do we use them? We use them because they are like guides. I just can move them around as I like. To do that, I use this one here, the move tool, and I can grab one and play around with it, move it wherever I like. Okay, now usually what I would do is when I start off, I decide how obviously the design is going to be. In this case, I decided to have 2 pictures here. This is a foldable menu. So this is the middle, okay, and these fold. And either I measure, there's a way how to measure as well, or I just put them where I think they should be. Now, obviously, for a design to be nice, when you see the design, you say, this is a nice design. This is why it's a nice design, because everything is organized in sections, sort of. So, like, for example, this title should be in line with this title. You know, this actually is not the latest version, I think, because it's not. For example, this one here should be in line with this one. So I can choose it with the move tool and move it down. And you see what happens when I move it? Look, it snaps up. I don't have to stay, you know, being careful that I move it exactly like it. It just snaps. And you decide here, snap to, guides, layers, document bounds, all, etc., where you want it to snap. Okay. So basically, you decide on the layout, and then it's up. How would I measure? For example, you know, somebody came and told me I want a business card, for example. Now, let's say a business card, I don't know how big they are. Don't have a handy ruler, but let's say it's 10 centimeters by 5 centimeters, okay? So what I would do is go File New in Photoshop. It's like I told you last time, if you remember, when you work on web, you use 72 when you work for your website, 72 dpi, pixels per inch. When you work for printing, you work on 300. So 300 pixels per inch, and I want it to be 10 centimeters by 5 centimeters. RGB color is fine. Okay, and that's my business card. Okay, now, when I start working on it, the first thing I would do is decide on the boundaries. So move, create a guideline. I created it. Let me do it slower so you see it. All I did was go on the ruler and drag down, click and drag. You know, and I moved it to here. But I want to make sure that the bottom one here, which I'm going to put at the bottom, is the same size. So I can easily do this. Look, marquee tool, just select, nothing. I mean, there's nothing yet. And that's the background. Drag it down. That's because I have an orange background. And create another one, because even the guideline itself sticks to the whatever, the marquee or whatever you have. That's how you measure, you know. And I decide on each one, do the same for here, and the same for here. And then, like I showed you last time, if I want to start putting the text, just because it's too small. What font am I using? There you go. And obviously, look, when even the text itself, see, look, it snaps. So you don't have to stay bothering that it comes exactly in line. And obviously, in graphic design, these things are extremely important, that everything's columns, lines, etc. In fact, like you can see here, there was a lot of, sometimes we use even more than this, and look at the number of layers that there are. Now, as well, when you do something for printing, in fact, for this, I had to do it after, but I forgot to do it. The printer will want what's called a bleed. A bleed, really, let's say this is the actual size of the menu, okay? He'll want an extra 5 millimeters here, so that he can cut it to size when he prints it. And basically what you do, actually this one has the bleed. See under the pictures here, the pictures here, these 2 pictures will actually be at the edge of the sheet. So this piece here will not be part of the printed menu, okay? Because I gave him a 5 millimeter, this is 5 millimeters long. I gave him a 5 millimeter bleed. And obviously you tell him, when you give him the artwork, that there is a 5 millimeter bleed. And he cuts it accordingly. That's in case of printing. Obviously, in case of web design, there's no need for a bleed. the picture can actually be the actual size. Let's go back to my PowerPoint. So that's the magic wand, which is very, very important. These are not so. The lasso tool is pretty much as well. So back to an image. The lasso tool is here. First of all, remember that in Photoshop, you choose the tools, but under each tool there can be more. For example, I showed you the rectangular marquee. I told you single and row and column, and there's also the elliptical. Let me explain this. Elliptical marquee. This is when you want to select a circle. Okay? Basically, you just drag and select. And plus and minus with shift and control works as well. And you can do really fancy shapes with it. If you want to select a perfect circle, you have to hold down the shift. When you hold down the shift, look, it never comes an ellipse wherever I move. It becomes a circle. So let's say, for example, if you're drawing a clock, obviously you'll need to make a circle and then make a border, etc. In fact, let me show you something else. Say 1000 pixels by 1000 pixels. Now, voila. At the moment, I have just the white background. I'm going to create a new layer, layer new. Now, why did I do this? Because before, so far, what I was doing is pasting an image. So when you paste an image, a layer is created for you automatically. But in this case, I'm drawing, so I have to create the layer myself. Because if I do it on the background, then it's stuck to the background. So new layer, you can call it whatever you like. And I'm going to hold down the shift and draw a circle. Okay? And do edit, fill, and I'm going to fill it with 50% gray, and that's my circle. One thing which I wanted to show you is that you can do edit, stroke. Stroke means make a border, sort of. So edit, stroke, whatever, this color. I have either inside the circle, center, half inside, half outside, or outside. And there's the border. See? That's stroke. It also works with text, and it's very good, actually. Let me show you an example. I think I might have showed you this already, actually. That when you want to, for example, I can show you on this one. Look, if I select the text here, I can have to first convert it to an image. So this is the one I'm working on. This is another important thing. At the moment, it's still text, so I can modify it. You know, can add more stuff, more text, etc. If I want to modify it as a graphic, I'd have to click on it here and go rasterize type. Rasterize, I just mentioned it before. A raster, I said, is a bitmap, is a pixel image, an image made of pixels. At the moment, it's like a vector. It's not a vector really, it's text, but it behaves like a vector. So I can modify it, change the font. Once I do rasterize, then I can't do it anymore. Rasterize, and now in fact, look, the other text has this T to show you that it's text, whereas the one now has become a graphic. We're talking about that one. But now I can use the magic wand, click anywhere outside, because obviously I'm just working on that layer, and it selected everything except the text. Now, this is very important. Now I want to select as well, obviously, the middle of the O, you know, the rest which hasn't been selected. But the problem here would be, in this case, there's only one, but if it was complicated, it would be much more difficult. So what I would do is select similar. And select similar has selected everything now apart from the text. Now, I want just the text, so select inverse. And now I have just the text on its own. And now edit, stroke. Let's do it yellow. And maybe 5 pixels is a bit too much, 3 pixels. See, if I select, deselect, so you can see it. See, and that's, now this is very, very, very handy for, somebody was without electricity. Yes, contact Andrew, please, at our office. So what I was saying. Yeah. In this case, this would be very handy if you wanted to make text on an image. Because, for example, if I put text here, now, why didn't my layer appear? Because my layer is up under the image. So I need to bring it here, up here. There it is. Now look, because, let me enlarge it a bit. See, because the background is made up of light colors, obviously, some of the letters don't show. This is why you would use the stroke. Let me do it again so you can see it. So first, what did I do? I converted it to raster. So one other tip here, when you do this, obviously, you cannot, once you do it, that's it. You cannot, if you make a spelling mistake in the word testing, for example, you cannot correct it and then you have to start again. So what would you do? You would do this, look, right click on this, click it layer. So now I have two, in fact, there's one, let's do, okay? This one, switch it off, so that if I mess up, I can go back and continue. And I'm gonna work on this, rasterize the type, and now it's become a bitmap made of pixels. I'm going to do like before, select everything. You might be thinking, why didn't I select them one by one, like this, with the plus shift, holding shift, because it's ACID. I'd rather select everything else and then select inverse. And now I've just got that. And now I would edit stroke outside, and this time I'll do it black. And as you can see, right click deselect. As you can see now, it shows. In fact, there is also a technique which I use a lot, maybe I show you later, that instead of having an outline like that, which makes it a bit cartoonish, I have a diffused outline, which is sort of, goes into from black to invisible. Another thing as well with text, which I show you on a white background, but not with just text, actually, with everything. Let's enlarge it. Now, I just clicked on the type and started typing, okay? That's nothing special. And see, it immediately created a layer. This thing of the layers, it's very, very, very important that you get used to it. And in all subjects, ICT, the only way you can get used to it is by trying and trying and trying. My students always tell me, not just in Photoshop, they tell me, but how do you remember all this? Because if you do it all the time, then you start remembering it. Now let's change the color of this text instead of black. Let's do it some other. I so selected it. Again, here you might be thinking, should I select them one by one? And no. It's still text at the moment, so just select it. And here you've got because since it knows it's text, you've got the font, the style. You've got bold, italics, whatever. It's just bold, the point size, and the color. So let's do it in red. And on the layer, right click, you've got as well very good blending options. Now this is really cool. Now say you wanted to give it a shadow. Drop shadow, see, there's a gray shadow now. And you can mess around with the shadow as much as you like. You can make it go far away. You can make it spread more. For example, spread size of the shadow. See? You can do whatever you like. It's up. Here, these are, I'm not going to get into them because there's a lot to say. This is blend mode. Really, how the color of the shadow is going to blend with the background. But you can either try them out or just leave it as it is. It will work fine. And also the opacity of the shadow, how opaque you want it. And also, which is very good, the angle. Really, when you change the angle, it is as if you are changing the source, a light source, sort of. Now, a few design tips. Very important that you don't exaggerate in the sense, first of all, if you use a shadow in a whatever website, document, whatever you're working on, make sure that you use the same shadow everywhere, because it will hurt the viewer's eyes to see that the shadows are coming from everywhere. And secondly, it will rarely use things like shadows. if you try and fit it in everything you do, you're going to look as if you're happy that you learned Photoshop, you know, and you're trying to put everything in a document. I mean, if you feel that you need to use it, but otherwise. Another feature is outer glow. Now, outer glow at the moment is not showing because it's yellow. See here. But if I had to do it black and increase it a bit, for some reason. Okay, normal, because it was how it was. It had to interact with the background. I just wanted to not to interact, just to be opacity. Spread is a bit too high. Size. Now, this I can apply. I'm showing you this, in fact, for that reason. This I can apply to here. Okay. In fact, what I can do is, this is really good, cool. Look, Mela, I spend the time to create this type of shadow. Okay. I can right click here and I do copy layer style. So I copied the effect of the outer glow which I just created. Go back to here, testing, copy, paste, layer style. See? And I got the effect from there to here. In fact, you can actually, in Photoshop, you can actually buy add-ons to have ready-made effects. If you read a bit about them, you can make things look like Chrome, for example, and things like that. So let's again go to blending options. There are many types of blending options. Now I'm going to switch off that. This is a drop shadow we did before. I can do inner glow. Now inner glow, again, it's yellow, so you can't see it. If I do it black and instead of screen, I do it normally. See, there is now an inner shadow. Look, you might have used for it an inner glow. I mean, inner shadow as well. Basically similar to before, but now this is a good effect to make it look embossed out. You see, it looks like a stencil. There's stroke, which I showed you, and there's also bevel and emboss. Bevel and emboss, it comes sort of embossed. Look, I can increase it, increase the size, and soften or make it chiseled. Look, I can do it up or down. There's lots of these, change the angles, etc., etc. You can even buy materials, because you can even have a pattern overlay. A pattern overlay. See, there are patterns. These are patterns which are part of Photoshop. There are a couple which I made as well, and you can see apply any pattern. A pattern is basically a picture, so you can draw something and then make the text look as if it's made of it as well. And you can even have as well a gradient. Gradient. This is the grade when you click. See what I did? So I went to gradient overlay. Of the gradient, blend mode is normal, opacity is 100%, so it's going to show on top. There's an angle as well of the gradient, and if I click on gradient, these are preset gradients, which are, you might not have them on yours, but some of them I made. But you can also mess around with them as much as you like by moving these things and by clicking. For example, if I want from orange, you know, that sort of thing. Opacity 100. Okay. This one, for some reason, didn't apply. Okay, and now I have a gradient from orange to yellow, and it's applied to the picture. And that will be saved for another time. And I can even change the angle so that it's a sort of, now it's coming from here, from left to right, rather than from top to bottom. And this obviously not only applies to text, it applies to anything you want. For example, sometimes we use this effect, like for example, this image, enough if I want to add text on her here, okay, I can add a layer, new layer. Now I have this empty layer, and then I can, there's also a gradient tool here, see, on the menu, gradient. I choose a gradient. Now I'm going to make one or choose one of, there is one here, from white to transparent. Now how does that work? It works like this, look. This is, actually it's gray, but because it's transparent there. And this is white, and here, opacity 0. which means it's totally transparent. And up here, opacity 100. So it goes. Now, if I go OK, and I start, the tool changes to this little cross, and I go from here and drag down. See? And I got squared behind the dana. So ovviamente, I can also then, maybe I want to put text here, this is why I'm doing it. And I can also use the move tool to move the layer. Or use your imagination, or change the opacity of the layer. You know, you can do, instead of just having a straight box, it's a sort of with a gradient. This is very, very handy, in fact. And when I want, I can just switch off the layer as well. So I was going to show you, oh yeah. Well, when you click on the lasso tool, the polygonal, you have polygonal, magnetic is where I never use it, and lasso tool. This is not for the faint-hearted, but you have to have the patience, a lot of patience. This is what you do, basically. Let's go back to the guide. And what you do is you sort of move it around. Instead of the polygonal, you know, you move it on your own. But all designers prefer the polygonal because this comes jagged, it's very difficult to use. The polygonal, it's good because, like I showed you before, you can do it in steps. Here to here to here to here to here. And I have to be careful because this is very annoying. Because if you want to remove the whole background, in this case, for example, like I showed you before, you have to go around all the image. Now, obviously, don't do it at one go. Because if you do it at one go and you make a mistake, it might take you 20 minutes to go all around it, and then you have to start again. And obviously, it doesn't. This is something we use a lot. Once somebody gave me a very old picture of during the Second World War of, I think, my wife's grandfather actually, with the Queen and the Prince, and the picture had got stuck to the glass of the frame. And there was a leg missing and part of a shoulder. And I managed to build it by getting similar images, and it was, at least it was black and white, which is quite a help. And I managed to build it, why you couldn't believe it. But obviously, it's a lot of cropping and routing, which I'm doing now. So, and for that, you need a hell of a lot of patience. Now, let's go back to the slideshow. Share. So those are the most important selection methods here. Now in PowerPoint, they are explained. Rectangular marquee, single row, single column. This is not very important. The lasso, the polygonal lasso, and the magnetic lasso. And the magic wand. And so this is what I explained about the tolerance of the magic wand, choosing the things which are colors which are similar, and there's also anti-aliasing and contiguous to select areas which are joined together. And these are some points to remember. This is repeating it, but I'm going to show you something very important before I do that. No. Back to Photoshop. I'm going to get another image. Oh, I have it open already, actually. Well, view fit on screen. I'm going to remove the other layers. Now, let's say I wanted to remove the boat. Now, for example, usually, I mean, what you would do at first attempt would be to get the paintbrush tool from here, which is obviously very easy to use. And now, first of all, why did it come with a no entry? See, there is a no entry symbol because I'm on a layer 2 is selected, and it's not switched on. So I have to go on a layer that's switched on. Now I can draw. So this, I had mentioned it a bit before. As a pen, you can choose different sizes of pens. Let's say I choose 22 pixels. Okay, Control Z. Then your first thinking would be to choose the color, similar color, go here and do this. In this case, it's pretty much enough, actually. See? In fact, maybe, see now, but now it's a problem because the image is complicated. But there's a very good way to do that. I can select the marquee tool, this time rectangular, and I do this, and I go edit, fill, content aware. Let's see what happens. Oop, and there's your ship gone, and it looks pretty much perfect. Now, how does that work? That what it does basically is it sees the surrounding pixels and uses the same color as the surrounding pixels. Now, obviously, but it depends. In this case, it was very easy because the ship was very small compared to the background, to the surrounding background. But in the case of something larger, you'd have to do it in steps. In a second, someone at the door. So, like I said, so in this case, it is very easy to do because it was small. I have another example, in fact, which is much more difficult. So let's say I have a picture and I want to remove the cranes. Now, obviously, this you can't do except with content aware. I mean, if you're really patient and have a lot of time, you could actually even do this and say removing the pixels manually. But obviously, that would be a problem. So what I can do is start little by little. Let's start with the cable here, for example. Edit, fill, content aware. See, deselect. Now, it's pretty much magic because, as you can see, it keeps the gradations of the background because the background is not one color. Let's try it up here. See, now it's a bit more difficult here. And obviously, if I exaggerate, if I grab the whole thing, for example, it will take longer to do. See, but it copied a bit of the other crane here, and so it's when it's difficult, it's difficult. But it's a great help. For example, let's try this piece. Yeah. There's no sign of it practically, but you have to do it, like I said, little by little. Okay? And practically, that's how we removed it. Now, this is also pretty good for other things. For example, well, I'm sure you've all seen images made by professional people for fashion and stuff like that, and you see the women, their faces will be totally perfect, 100%. In nature, nothing is perfect, and the ones you see are usually all photoshopped. Now, let me try first to do with content aware. Edit, fill, content aware, see, and there you go. It's gone. But here as well. Okay. And if you notice, there's a shine here, a natural shine, and it even copied the shine. There is even another way as well. There's where is it? And sharpen. Here it is, clone stamp tool. This is called the clone stamp tool. Now this is how it works. Look, first of all, again, up here, it's always like this. When you select a tool, up here you'll have the settings for that tool. Now 6 pixels is too small. Let's do, let's say, 25 pixels. Now, what you do is, you select, let me Yeah. So what you do, basically with this tool, well, I selected the tool, selected the size, and now I have to use the Alt key. So what I can do is press Alt and click, then click where I want to copy it. So basically it's like copy paste, sort of, but actually it's not, because it's not making any layers. So it's like manual. In this case, for example, click here, you know. Content aware in this case does the job as well, but this is another quite a handy tool to use. One other tool which I've been showing you is the eraser tool. Basically, as you can imagine, it erases. Now, why did it come yellow? Because here, these two, I mentioned them last time, this is the foreground color and this is the background color, and the background color is yellow. So obviously it's going to come yellow. So erasing is actually sort of painting. But let's undo. If I had to, since I have no layers, okay? If I had to go, let's say, on one where we have layers. Okay. Now here we have no layers. Okay. Edit, copy, edit, paste. So now I have a layer with the lady. Now in this case, the eraser tool is actually going to erase the image. Okay, because the background is transparent. Now it is off. Now it's back on. So bear in mind that when you're working with the eraser, first of all, you're erasing bitmaps or graphics and not text, unless you convert them to graphics before. And you are actually removing the content. But you can also do opacity, and you really don't remove all the content. In fact, you can do it much less and practically. So this is usually a tool which is used in combination with other tools. There's also a choice of brush, pencil, or block. As you can imagine, a pencil is like a pencil and a block is a square. This kind of setting exists in most of the other tools that we have here. One other thing, I don't know, maybe I mentioned it. One other thing, when you're designing, okay, usually you would need to know the color, okay, to pick up a color and to know which one you picked up. Now, first of all, in a website, for example, try and stick to some colors, in the sense that, for example, what we usually do, if I have a job to do on a site, I'm going to start a new one, for example, first thing I would need is the logo. Why do I need the logo? Because the logo, I usually, if the logo is red and black, I'm going to base the site on red and black, unless obviously the client wants it to some different color. And why is that? Because there shouldn't be a whole mess of different colors. It should be according to a color plan. Now, usually, if you get a designer to design your corporate image, they'll decide with you on a color scheme, on a font, a style of text, and they give you like a commercial sort of dossier, which will have these things. And if you go to a web developer, it would be excellent to give them to him so that he can keep the image homogeneous with your enough business cards, brochures, sign of your premises, etc. But sometimes you don't have all this and you need to pick a color. So in that case, for example, if I want to pick this purple here to know what color it is, I can simply click on the color here and see the pointer becomes a pipette. That means you're going to pick up the color. So if I want to pick up the violet, that's the violet. Now, to be a good designer, you have to, for example, this is violet, which is one of these 20418 RGB or 314 HSB, or these numbers CMYK, or this hexadecimal number on website. Okay, so that you write it down somewhere and you say, for this guy, for my website, I'm going to use that purple everywhere, and not on one page it's darker, on one page it's not dark, you know, like that. And you stick to it. Now, let's go back to PowerPoint. This is the replacing of the head. This, in fact, we usually do it in class. I did it like I showed you with that girl Obviously, then to put a face of someone on someone else, you have to be a bit wise. First of all, you choose them in such a way that, for example, enough if they're looking left, find a picture of the other person that's also looking left. If it's in broad daylight, find a picture which is in broad daylight. You know, try not to, because if you try, for example, and put a face of someone at night on someone during the day, you're going to have a hell of a time trying to get it to work. So ideally, you try and find a similar image. Obviously, as well, the size of the image is important. The size of the object in the image, the person in this case, is also important. But I've done a few myself, and I've seen very good ones. And then you use all these tools which I have been explaining to make them look as if they belong together. Layers, as I explained already, in fact, a file with 2 or more layers is known as a layered composition, which I've been doing. Layers are the most important thing in Photoshop, and it's what gives Photoshop its power. Similar to having, exactly, this explanation is really good. In fact, working with layers is really easy. It is similar to having a number of transparent paper on top of each other, and each one with its own shapes and images. If the top paper can be a large circle in the middle, then all the other papers with graphics in the middle will not be visible because they are under it. We can add layers, remove layers, and merge layers. Merge layers, I think I showed you last time, means join them together, 2 layers become one. So their content becomes intertwined. Big layers. This is quite important as well. Sometimes a layer is bigger than the size of the canvas. In the first lecture, I had explained canvas, that you're like a painter, you have a canvas, but the layer can be much larger than the canvas, and you can move it along, you know, and show any part of it. You can decide to remove some of the image to make our file size smaller. So it's important to know that when you save it as a Photoshop document, when you do save as in Photoshop, you are saving the layer regardless of how big it is. So next time you open it, you're going to find everything there. That doesn't mean that if the image, when you do save for web, like I showed you, it's not going to make any difference, because in that case, it's only going to save what is visible. So you can have 1,000 layers, and when you save it, if only one is showing, that one will be saved, because it becomes a JPEG. You can even duplicate layers. I showed you this as well. From one layer, make another. I just did it now to have a spare layer. If you want to be like accurate, you should name them as well, because they'll be easy to find if you name them. Duplicate a scalar layer, we need to use free transform tool. This I showed you already. And repeat again. This is, you might not need it really much, but this is a good thing as well. When you do transformations, like for example, making everything smaller or making everything bigger, you can do transform again, so that the steps you would have done in first layer will happen to the second layer, to the third layer, without having to stay moving the mouse, clicking, etc. Now, stacking, this I showed you as well. Stacking layers, I'm going to go back to Photoshop. Stacking layers means, where's our, well, here we have the layer with the purple lips, and stacking means that I can, for example, now I have the face, which we made before. Okay, in fact, if I move it, go to the move tool and click on the keyboard, oops, the layer, I can move. See the layers, the lips, the purple lips are under the layer with the red lips. But if I want, I can do this, and now, obviously, this one is not visible. But if I turn this off, it's back. And I could even, for example, use a bit of imagination, reduce the opacity of this, and now her lips are fading from purple to red. You can see the face move a bit because it's not exactly positioned on the original, but you get the idea. If I had to duplicate layers, I would do, for example, like this, duplicate layer, and now I have, well, one is here, the opacity is only 25%, let's put it up. This one is here, opacity as well, and the original layer. See? Those are all layers, and you can create as many as you like. Now, the merge layer, if I had to right click and merge down, in fact, look, you have these selections. Either merge down. Merge down means merge this one with the one under it. So layer one copy with layer one. Or merge visible. Merge visible, so I show you this. Merge visible means you merge all the layers. Or flatten image, which in this case means exactly the same thing. Look at merge visible. All of a sudden now I have no layers. I see, but this is the difference. Look, when I did merge visible, it merged only those layers which are at the moment visible. So if I make this one visible as well, and then here merge visible, now it's become just the background. Undo. But since this was switched off and I did merge visible, this one is not merged. Okay. Now this is something you have to be a bit careful with, because once you do it and save, there's no going back, and you've lost your layers, which means then you cannot mess around with it later on, you know, modify it and that sort of thing. Somebody is asking me, are being recorded, are going to be available on our Facebook page. Actually, they are available, but I think at the moment it's on request. Andrew, talk to Andrew Aquilina at Malta at smechamber.mt, and he'll tell you what to do. Because obviously this is only available for members. So, where was I? Now let's share again. So switching layers we did. There's also here, because these slides are taken, I mean, when I teach this subject, we go into much more detail than this. And I also explain also the shortcut keys, because in Photoshop it's very, very important to shortcut keys, especially if you're doing it, you know, to make money for a living. You can also group layers as well. Why would you group layers? You group layers, first of all, to group them, you basically select. If I had to group, for example, these two in layers, you can, once you click, you just select one, as I'm showing you now. But if I click on one and hold the control key and click on the other, I've selected two. Okay. Now, what happens when they're both selected? If I can move them around together, for example, but I can also create. In fact, there's also a smart object and even groups. But for you, maybe it's a bit too complicated for now. But look, if I selected three of them, another thing. So to select, either one click select, hold control, select more than one, or if I want to select a range, okay, hold shift, select first, hold shift. I can show you on my other one because it has a lot of layers. For example, these, look, from there, press shift till there, and it selected all those together. And because they're selected, if I move them around, everything moves around. You see? Same thing. Now, back to opacity. I've showed you as well. Designing an advert. I think this is the last slide, yes. Now, I'm going to start with an advert. So the advert is going to be 300 dpi, 21 centimeters by 6 centimeters. Okay, so wait a second, I lost my share screen. Now, these, I'm going to close everything. Okay, and I'm going to start new. So in fact, that this example is based on in real life. This is what happens if you want to design an advert. Most likely, if it's, for example, for a newspaper or a magazine, they're going to give you a size because you obviously you pay according to the size of the advert. And the size will be in centimeters or millimeters. And rule of thumb, any design done for printing is usually done at 300 dots per inch. For web, at 72, like I said many times. So in this case, I'm going to work at 300 and 21 centimeters by 6. Now here as well, maybe you're not figuring it out. This means that if I print it, this is the size exactly it will come. As long as when I print it, I set my printer to 300 dpi. If I set my printer to 600 dpi, it's going to come half size. Okay, so if I want an exact print by size, it has to be precisely done like that. So okay, and that's the size of my image. Obviously for now it's empty. I'm going to go to Firefox and Google, and let's say enough. This advert is going to be of shoes, for example, special offer on shoes. So find some shoes images. Now, the first thing I would do is switch to Google Images, okay, and then Tools, Size, Large. Why am I doing this? Because I want to, like I explained, I want to start with a big image as much as possible. Now, this I mentioned in the first lecture. Ideally, you take the photo yourself, or you buy it, or you get it from your supplier page. But this is what I'm doing now is obviously a bit dangerous because it's like stealing, basically. And if they don't like it, if it's copyright, you might get a letter telling you that it's copyright. Be careful as well, because at the moment there's a scam. You get an email from these guys pretending to be like some sort of security or copyright police telling you that you've used their image, blah, 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 but it's not legit. And they ask you for money. I know some people who actually paid. Now, let's see. Yeah, whatever. For example, this one, let's see the size. This is 2000 by 2000, but it's a JPEG. I'd rather find a PNG. How do I know it's a PNG? Because it goes these squares, so it has no background. I mean, ideally, I'd use this stuff, but it's more of a hassle because I have to save it and load it. Let's find something else. Now, as well, when you click here and you get the image here, if you realize, it shows you how big the image is, and this is correct. Give me a second. So it's 1000 by 1000, which is fine. Edit, copy, and go back to Photoshop and paste. Now, in this case, obviously, it's easy because it's white on white. And if you realize, because it's 1200 pixels, because the background image, if I do image size at the centimeters, which we did, okay, which was our sort of specification that we have to work with, it comes to 21 by 6 at 300 dpi, 2480 pixels wide by 709 pixels high. Okay, so my 1200 by 1200 image fits nicely, as you can see. Now let's put it here. Okay, now another thing for inspiration, which is something which is usually obviously not on tap. Like I want to put special offer. Okay, so just to get ideas, I will come here, special offer tag, let's say. And see, there's a lot of nice ones made ready for me. Now, when you click on them, these, for example, let's see this one. See, before I was telling you about vectors, this is called vector stock. This you have to buy. Now you might be tempted to copy it and stay removing the lines, but it's going to take you forever. But this one you can buy as a vector, resize it and do what you like with it. They're not cheap, but you get the job done really, really quickly if you do that. Even this one, look, it says isolated on white background, 3D rendering. But if you look around a bit, this is vector stock. Let's see. For example, this one, 123f.com, is a very popular site like Shutterstock, which you can buy images from. Vecteezy. These are vectors, but let me just try and find the JPEG. So sometimes as well, when we're working for a client, what we do is, for example, this image here, it's got all the Dreamstime watermark on it so that you don't steal it for them, okay? Since obviously the client has to like it, okay? Maybe you don't want to buy it and then the client doesn't like it, or your partner doesn't like it, for example. So what you do is you can use it with the watermark, and then if it's liked, you buy it after, and you replace the one with the watermark to the one without. Somebody asked a question. Good question. Size to upload to a website. First of all, for a website, it has to be 72 dpi. But the images themselves, the size, it depends on what. For example, if it's a product image, and in a product image, you might have, you click and it appears larger. I would stick to 800 by 800 pixels. 800 by 800 pixels would be like a quarter of a screen, sort of, which is fine for a large image. Then the website itself will reduce it, show it smaller when it needs to be smaller. What you should never do is use the largest image you have, 6,000 pixels, because you think that the browser, the website is going to reduce it. It will, but your website will take forever to load and you'll get penalized by Google. Then it depends, of course, certain websites, when you have, so, for example, a banner, one of these either full screen or a top banner which has navigation and you can scroll and left and right and fades and all that. That has to be big. Rule of thumb, in fact, is if an image of a product or of anything, a logo or whatever, part of the site furniture, which we call site furniture, if it's 100K over 100 kilobytes, it means it's too big. Okay, there's no question. So you have to reduce it, except these huge images that are either full screen, those obviously you have to live with them. But otherwise, make sure you reduce them. Now, how do you reduce them? You reduce them with Photoshop. I mean, like I've been showing you. You do. Let me show you again. New share. For example, this one is too big. It was 2480 by 709. That's obviously huge for a website. Besides the shape is, let me make one. Let's say we were selling this product on the website instead of an advert, okay? So let me just copy this part, edit, copy merged, file, new. I'm gonna make another image. So now our thing is 1242 by 709. If you had to put like a couple of hundred images like this on your website would crawl. You simply couldn't use it like that. So first of all, on your website, 300 dpi, that is not needed. So first of all, the thing I'm going to do is convert it to 72, and automatically here, look, it reduced the size for me. In fact, I'm going to make it like this, 1000 pixels. Now that's the size, which is new, image size, 1000 by 7. To actually save it, what I would do is, again, change the size, image size, make it 800, okay? And then go File, not Save, because Save will save the Photoshop document with layers and all. I need for the website, Save for Web. I'm going to choose JPG, which is usually what we save. And that's it. So this image, which is pretty big anyway, is only 73.45K. So if you have images which are 200K, forget it. You have to reduce them. And then it's showing you here that at 2 megabits per second, which is quite a regular speed, it will take 1 second to download. Nowadays, in fact, we have even more than that, but my Photoshop on this PC is a bit old. But to get a rough idea, if it had to be much bigger, it will tell you. And like I explained last time, obviously stick to JPEG, because a PNG like this, all of a sudden now is 261K, which is too big. File size, I mean. So JPEG, and you can select the quality, etc. If you remember, I mentioned progressive as well, like Facebook does, that the image is not shown at one go, but build up. If you have a good internet connection, it will be built up really quickly. You won't even notice. So back to our advert and back to the internet. For the special offer graphic, let me copy this. Let's see. This is quite good actually. Copy image. Now I'm going to open another image so I don't paste it right away. Paste. Okay, and I'm going to select just this one. Now, why did I go for the polygonal lasso tool instead of the rectangular? Because it's easier to do this. Look. Yeah, just want that. Edit, copy, edit, the other one, edit, paste. Okay, and that was my special offer. Now, obviously, because it's white on white, I copied the background, so I have a problem now. If I want to put it on the shoes, it's a problem, but not much, because I'm on that layer. I go to Magic Wand, select the white, delete on the keyboard, and my background is gone. You see? And obviously, you can use your imagination and add text here. For example, this layer, in effect, maybe we could try is a shadow. Okay, because it comes like a bit 3D with the shadow. Not too much. Like it comes out at you. And then I can add my own text. For example, here, maybe the advert would have looked much better if I made a nice background. So I can go back to the internet, and this time do grassy plain. Size is large, and let's see. Or maybe better just grass. This website is actually called grassonline.co.uk. Is this too small? This is fine. Copy image. Go back to Photoshop. And paste. Now, obviously, it's at the top, and I need to move it to the bottom. And I have a problem with the shoes, because the shoes have a background. Again, I can select the shoes here, Magic Wand. Now, look what happened with the shoes, because I chose the Magic Wand and the tolerance is 60. 60 means that the white is going to select parts of the shoes. So what I would do is then try with 10. See, and now we're fine. Press delete key, and my background is gone. What you're seeing here, this part of the background, that's because the background is white. Now there's no background, and I need this layer to continue as well. So what I would do is either enlarge it or duplicate. Now I have two grass layers and move it. See? And all of a sudden I have two. In this case, Since it doesn't have many features, the grass, it looks as if it's perfectly joined. It's not really, but you can barely tell. In fact, if I was doing this for real, what I would do is transform, because this side of the grass is like this side of the other grass. So what I would do is Control T, transform, and I would do flip horizontal. So now the sizes have changed, and then join them here. And like that is going to be much more seamless than before. Now let's add some text. Now, in this case, for example, choosing the right color, okay, would be either a white or maybe this pink. Okay, so I'm going to put it at the top. Use a bit. And make it, say, white. Make another layer with text. And now pick the color. In this case, it's going to be pink. Now, what I'm saying, for example, is, first of all, I'm going to increase it, Control T and drag. And then select this one. When I do this, look, instead of finding it here, I just right click it and do that. Now what I'm saying is that the grass is a bit too dark, so what I can do is select the layers up here. If I do this, you know, it's reducing the chisel. So if you don't know how, you'll do it twice. So instead, I select this one, right click, merge down, and now the grass has become one layer instead of two. Okay? And now I can reduce the opacity or the fill, something like that. Or maybe instead, I can select the layer, image, adjustments, brightness and contrast, and instead make it a bit lighter like that it shows less. So see, and you have to use your method. See, and that's why I used the pink, because the pink matches with the pink. You know, for example, here I would never use blue, and red text in red is not very popular either. But obviously, it would be even better if I found the font that matches this. Now, fonts, there are thousands. In fact, for your websites, I can show you something else. When we design websites, nowadays, we use Google Fonts. This is a free service by Google. And there are thousands here of fonts. Now, these will work on a website and even in Photoshop. So basically, when you're designing, you know, you can download a font and even use it in your website. When I say it works on a website, you're not as a graphic, but as an actual text of the site. And you can even, in fact, use it without downloading it or anything. If you want to download it, you download it. You can use it sort of service. Basically, you choose one. Another thing, fonts like this one, for example, Pangolin. I mean, okay, they look pretty neat, but on the website, they don't look neat at all. You know, you should never use something, unless you're making a kindergarten website or childcare center or something like that. Forget it. This is one of the ones I use most, Oswald. I really like it. And there's Lato, which is very popular as well. There are many. I mean, it depends what you're doing. For example, if I was doing enough a museum website or a history website, I might consider something like this, which is like Times New Roman. Open Sans, this is very popular as well. And when you select it, here it shows you different variations that this font has. These are for the website developer. Like 300, the 300, that is the boldness of the font. Here it shows you the other fonts included, because sometimes when you choose a font, it might not have the stuff you need. For example, it might not have the euro symbol. In this case, it's here. Look, recently I was doing a job, in fact, and I used digital numbers, like a 7-segment display numbers, and it didn't have a colon for the clock. I had to draw it instead. And then you can download it here, or you can even, there's a story who wrote it and all that. And you can even, if you are developing your own website, you can include it inside the website without downloading it. What happens really is that when the website loads, it goes to Google and gets the font that time for the site. If you ask me, is it an efficient system? If you download the font and include it in your own web server, it's better. But a lot of people nowadays do this because it's very, and obviously keep in mind as well that you cannot use a lot of fonts on a website. First of all, it looks tacky, and secondly, the more stuff you add, the more, if you want to be fancy and you include 10 fonts, that means your website is going to take longer to use, to download each page, and that can be a huge problem. Well, basically, I think that about covers it. Obviously, we can do much more, but like I said, I'm trying to keep things as simple as possible. One thing about, don't forget, last time I mentioned, I want to say it again, most of you are probably in business, for your websites, if you want to appear in the Google organic listing without paying, I mean, the key is content. Content, and more content. Text, which you don't steal, which you write yourself. It doesn't have to be, the Magna Carta, but it's important that text is included because the search engines look at text, so it's useless having just images. And if you can have a blog included, even better. It's very, 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 very important. When people search to buy something, they usually go to Google. And statistics show that here in Malta, almost 80% of the public is now first going online, not because of COVID, I mean even before COVID, first go online, they look at prices and models and everything, and then they might go to the shop anyway. But the decision is made online. So forget having a website without prices. Don't give me this rubbish because your competitors know the price. Your competitors, if they were their short, know the prices anyway. And if you don't have the prices online, you are missing out a lot. Ideally, they should even buy online, but maybe for some people it's not easy. I understand. I mean, for example, shops selling stock which changes very, very often, and you get very small quantities. It's impossible to put it online. But at least maybe if you have items which are usually in stock, put those. But people need to be able to decide. When I see adverts on Facebook, for example, without prices, just nothing, the only companies that can afford to do that are Coca-Cola, because it's a household name and everybody knows Coca-Cola and they know how much it costs and everything. But otherwise, if you're a small business, you need to include the prices. And don't say because eBay is cheaper, because for example on eBay, if you go make a search on eBay for enough socks, for example, there's going to be 1,000 people selling the same socks, all at different prices. So if it's as you're thinking that people will only buy socks which are the cheapest, there would only be one, but still there are thousands. Best payment gateway having an online shop in Malta apart from PayPal. Well, now there is quite a few actually. The thing with PayPal, you have to include PayPal because in all the courses and in all the information that there is locally, everyone suggests that people use PayPal. And for obvious reasons, they're right. Because PayPal, there's a barrier between you, the merchant, and the credit card of the guest, of the user. And that says a lot, because if you in the beginning we used to have each payment gateway live on our site, sort of, and that means then nowadays you would need PCI compliance, which is extremely not easy to get. So that's one, and then there are others. There's one, I can't remember the name at the moment. We had, if you look at our Facebook page, we recently did an event with them, acquiring.com. They sponsored one of our events. These, in fact, they have a system which I really think is a really great idea. Basically, what it does is that for people who are not really selling online, okay, say you just have on Facebook and you have some products with displays with prices, and people want to buy, you can talk to them on Messenger, the people, and they decide, I want, for example, this pair of shoes and this pair of shoes. So the cost is 80 euros. You would send them a link, either through WhatsApp or through Messenger or through SMS, whatever. And the link will be just a click away. They click, they go into this acquiring site, and they pay the bill there. And the money arrives in your account. And I am told that their charges are very reasonable as well. And so that's a great way. They also have a payment gateway, which you can use. And the payment gateway that they have is like PayPal as well, which is really, I don't know if you notice, but when you use PayPal, when you come to the part, first you add to cart, then you get to the customer goes to the cart, he sees the items, he says pay now, check out, he checks out, and then he's taken to PayPal, the transaction is done on PayPal, and he goes back to your website. Actually, there what's happening is when he goes to your website, back to your website, PayPal is sending a message to your website then telling this guy paid, payment okay. So the customer is totally safe. These guys have the same system exactly. So, and it's local and it's much less than PayPal. PayPal, the biggest hurdle is the cost because they charge to their nose. Sometimes as well, I've had clients that use a system with deposits as well. That's a good idea in certain businesses. So say if somebody made a purchase of 150 euro on your site, you take 100 or 10 euro or 20 euro through PayPal. So you would have lost the 5% on those 20 euro, and then they pay on delivery either because you have a portable ATM or Revolut or whatever, So that's another way to do it. Obviously, even if you use a portable ATM, there's still the 2% of the bank, which you can't escape anyway. But that's a part and parcel of what happens. The thing is, from my experience, I can tell you that when shops do well, and there are many who were doing well before COVID, the percentage that the payment gateways take isn't such a problem, because you'll start selling much more than you think on your online shop. And to you, if you're especially used to brick and mortar shops all your life, to you, that's all extra. So it doesn't really matter. Now, in fact, that's what I always suggest. I always suggest, look, start with PayPal because it's the cheapest and the easiest thing to do without a problem, doesn't have any problems at all. Then when you start selling and doing well, then include another payment gateway or include payment on delivery and all that. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of customers, you still have to deliver. By the way, one last thing about deliveries. Nowadays, there are, I'm sure you know, many companies that are delivering. Even post-COVID, pre-COVID, there was 3 or 4 companies, courier companies, which are pretty cheap. And these guys charge, I think, 6 euros or 7. They come to your premises, collect the goods, take them to the client, and bring you back the money. How convenient is that? And obviously, if you like, you can include this charge so that the customer pays it for the delivery. At the moment, you can't, because at the moment with COVID, everybody's doing free deliveries. But this is only for a limited time. Later on, people, in fact, I've done sites where we even did, depending on the area. For example, if your premises in Bura and you deliver to Mellieha, it's going to cost you more than someone who has his shop in Birikara or somewhere more north. So you can even do that. And some people as well choose pickup. You can even do pickup and they pick it up themselves. but they make the deal online. I'm telling you, a lot of people, including me, I do it all the time. Everything I buy, I don't necessarily buy from abroad. I buy also from Malta, but first I check online. So if you're not there, you're not even considered. Nothing. You know, you might be cheaper for all I know, but nobody has time to stay running around the shops, you know, checking everything. That simply doesn't make sense anymore. When you can sit in your room at home, comfortable, and stay studying about the product and seeing what peer reviewers on Facebook and that have said. Another thing before I go as well, this thing of bad comments on Facebook. Once I had a friend of mine who has a huge company. He told me we need to speak to them, these guys of Are You Being Served, because they leave the bad vibes, they leave them there, blah, blah, blah. And I told him, okay, we'll see. And I came to my office, checked, and this guy had 5,000 people saying he's great. You know, the next best thing to sliced bread. And like 5 complaining. And I called him, I told him, are you mad? I mean, so what? It's what you do when they complain. I know some people are irrational and they complain for nothing. Trust me, I've been in business all my life. But still, what you do is you respond. It's very important that you don't ignore them. And you try and, you know, get it right. It's whatever you do, you can't always get everything right. But still, this is like TripAdvisor. I made a huge number of reviews on TripAdvisor. When I go to eat out, God willing, will go soon. I check TripAdvisor. If 5,000 people are saying the restaurant is good, the restaurant is good. If there are 10 moaners who are saying it's not, to hell with them. I mean, I listen to 5,000. And besides, with these numbers, most likely, I mean, they can't get their friends to do the reviews because nobody has that amount of friends willing to stay wasting time doing reviews. You know, this is the strength of the internet, peer reviews. Well, I hope you learned something and enjoyed it. Thanks for attending and have a good day.